welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick and co-host is Chris Lucian. And today we have Cyrus Metcalf on the show to talk about some exciting things and some of his exciting mobbing experiences. So we got automated quality gates. We're talking about mobbing to level people up, mobbing, being an embedded developer or the only developer at a company or a startup. And so this kind of fun stuff I'm excited to dig into. But before we do, Cyrus, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be on the show. My name is Cyrus Metcalf, as was said. I'm an embedded engineer in Portland, Oregon, working with Photon Marine. We are working to bring electrification technology to work boats and electrification of port facilities.
Nice. Right on. Sounds quite exciting. It's always cool to see tech and mobbing applied in different domains. Yeah, let's just jump into your first topic you got here. Sounds like you got some passion around automated quality gates. What are you thinking here?
Absolutely. This has got to be one of the favorite features that I have picked up from working in a mob. And this is a tool that a mob that I'd worked at several years ago used to ensure that all of the code changes that we made, when we saved the file, we would immediately get rapid feedback on the status of the code that we had written. So you write your test, compile, everything's fine, write your code, everything's fine. As soon as you save the file, we have the gateway set up to automatically execute all of the unit tests, perform formatting on the files so we could have consistent looking diffs of the files if we were looking at any differences. And the system would also automatically run our software on the embedded device so that we had hardware in the loop measurements and determination if our software functioned correctly, basically as soon as we hit save on a file. Why I love this is it really did cut down on the amount of time it took for our mob to not only implement new features, but also have confidence that they work and be able to demonstrate and communicate the functionality to anybody who may be concerned about that functionality. We talk a lot in Agile about customers and communicating with customers. Customers do not frequently have in-depth understanding of how these software systems work. And so that's one thing that I found by implementing these quality gateways is not only do they act as a preventative measure to keep you, a developer, from having mistakes that you've created enter into your main body of work, they also provide a system of tools that you can use to communicate your functionality of your system to people who may not have in-depth technical understanding of the underlying implementation.
Nice. That's really cool. I mean, I've noticed that mobbing and continuous delivery and this kind of automation tend to go hand in hand, maybe because mobbing just makes it easier to learn these kinds of things. One clarification question I had was, when you hit the save button, you use that word save button, did the formatter run locally and or in the pipeline, or just locally, or like
both, actually.
Okay.
We would frequently have the our local text editor set up to perform the formatting locally. However, we also had the gateway set up to reject any code that had not been formatted. So if you were trying to merge in a pull request that had not been through the formatter, GitHub would say, sorry, format it. Or later on, we actually set it up to automatically format and then take care of that for you. So,
and this is in a firmware context, correct?
As in a firmware context, but we applied it to all of our software models.
Right.
There are very good automatic formatting tools that you can apply with the ability to set special rules and conditions to have the code formatted to your liking. I know Clang has some tools that are good for C and C++ in this regard, and there's several for Python that I like. I especially like it for Python.
Yeah.
White space matters so much in Python.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason I ask about the firmware context, I think, is because it's probably a little bit more rare to hear about agility being practiced in the firmware world, and so that also could be an interesting thing to dive into. Do you find that there's any resistance to that, or differences between the software and the firmware side, or is it maybe a little bit more willingness to be agile because it's in a startup context? Like how do you see that kind of laid
Well,
out?
I guess when it comes to the embedded system side of things, where agility comes into play is drawing that barrier between your hardware application layer, your implementation, and the actual software architecture of what you want your device to do. For example, we've got a system right now that's running on a certain automotive grade VCU. It's got its own hardware abstraction layer. So there are provided functions, a provided library that we would call to read a PWM or toggle an IO or send a CAN message. Now, on the user perspective, what we have is functionality. I push the throttle up. The propulsion system goes forward. That's what the user cares about. That's what we care about because we are making software that controls a boat. So we separate out the business logic into a small chunk of code that really defines our product. From that, we extract all of the hardware implementation, all of the parameters that define what hardware systems are being operated by our code. And then from there, we essentially just set it to have our production code link to the correct implementation libraries and deliver a binary at the end that's configured for the custom hardware.
Awesome.
Ideally using the same logic between each.
Yeah. So are they it sounds like they're kind of separate teams but come to collaborate on APIs together and then split up again, or is it more like software and embedded people mobbing together on the implementation?
In this case, I'd say it's more software people and hardware people mobbing together on the implementation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because our team has electrical, mechanical, and myself doing the software. And all of us sort of have a Venn diagram of knowledge of each other's realm enough to where we collaborate cross-functionally.
Mhm.
I think that would be a good way to put it, would be a multidisciplinary mob, if you will, working together on one major project. And I'm taking care of the software aspects of that. Now, this is where I have a little bit of concern as a small team, and this circles into the point we were going to discuss on working alone. The thing I love about quality gateways is when I'm working alone as a software developer on a project, I personally get concerned because there may not be anyone on the team capable of directly criticizing my code. They might not have enough in-depth knowledge to go in, find mistakes in how I implemented a pulse width modulation function, etc. So I have to find different ways to check myself for errors, which is where the quality gateway comes in. But also I've had to put in a lot of work, and I've gained a lot of this through my experience mobbing, working with juniors, working with seniors, customer communication. I have to work on ways of communicating all of the functionality that I implement in a way that my customer, my team, is able to understand, process, and move forward with.
Nice. Nice. That's cool. Yeah. And then there's that kind of feels like the healthy interaction between automation and human automated feedback and human feedback, right? So you want to automate the things that you can, and like formatting seems like a good one for that, for example.
Absolutely. It was, if we could automate everything, I absolutely would. It was, I had a mentor that said once, our goal as software engineers is to make everything as simple as the push of a button, and then if possible, automate that button push.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A quote after my own heart, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say Chris would probably automate me as co-host if he could somehow. I mean, but how would you know if it was so good? Maybe this is it in action right now.
I think I'm probably a deep fake at this point myself. So.
Nice, right on. Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. And yeah, and for me, it's freed up a lot of uh, time spent on kind of more brute force stuff to more deeper thinking stuff. In one particular area, I've asked about the format a couple times. Maybe I'll end with this question is I've kind of like half done it, the automation with formatting,
Sure.
and maybe I haven't leaned into it hard enough. But the problem I've had is that it's like I almost agree with the formatting. It's like, oh, that's great, that's great, that's great. But then it's like in this case, I'm like, that looks worse than how it was before. And so I just haven't really invested into learning, like, do I just keep tinkering with it until it like does exactly what we as a team want it to do? Or is it don't fight the tool and just like embrace this new formatting style? Um, yeah, what are your thoughts there? Like
You
maybe what are
know,
your experiences?
Honestly, that
Yeah.
is a fantastic question because I myself am guilty of this as well, and a lot of coders are. Where do you put the curly braces? Tabs or spaces? There are so many little tiny formatting things that have caused huge arguments on teams, and honestly, that's one of the reasons I like doing the automatic formatting is that at least now it's done. Like there's a tool, we have a standard and we can roll with it. Now, granted, like you say, it might not be a perfect standard. These tools are adjustable, and that's one thing that I like about the mob is if someone brings up something like, oh, maybe if we put the curly brace on a different line, it'll be easier to move functionality around. Or if we don't include all of this information on one line, our diff will be more clear. So you can kind of analyze these things and tweak it as you go and develop a system that fits the project that you're working in, style of code that your team is developing.
Nice.
And I feel like that's, when I think about formatting, I really think about it once again as a communication tool, because one thing that we are looking at quite a bit is differences in code. We're pulling up this file versus that file. And I've seen it so many times where with inconsistent formatting and a lot of things moved around, you pull up a diff and you have less information. You don't know what changed. You just know a lot of things changed.
Nice.
If
Yeah.
you ensure consistent formatting, then it can help make diffs more clear, which makes finding mistakes, finding changes a little bit easier, and explaining changes a little bit easier as well.
Oh, I love that. That is good. So just to take it one level deeper. So when you as your team would get together and be like, oh, we're going to change it from this to that, you would configure the tool to format differently. So you like take the time so that the automation would
Right.
form to what you as a team want the format to be,
Right,
basically.
exactly. And that would be
Okay.
recorded in the Git context. I keep the formatting file, the configuration for the file with the project, such that if we do have a change to the formatting, then it is recorded as a Git entry. So
Gotcha.
There's also, one thing I see, kind of on a similar topic, but maybe a different vein is, so Visual Studio Code has a plugin called Peacock, and when there are a lot of different IDEs open, Peacock is really interesting because it allows you to color code all your IDEs. So
oh, that's
you'll
nice.
have a green one, for the back end and a red one for the front end, and then other things. And so I even have projects that reference other projects, and if you open one or the other, you might get confused. They all have different Peacock configurations, so color will change the color of the IDE depending on which one you uh,
That's
log
really
into.
smart. I like that. It gives you really fast feedback. You just know at a glance which project you're working on, and kind of lets you, I guess, set your mental context a little bit better as well.
Right. Yeah. So like linting rules, but yeah, this other trend of like making it really, really easy to know where you are, especially if you ever get confused. It's
Mhm,
pretty good.
mhm.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I was on a mob once where they figured out a way to color the Chrome icon differently or something, or it had a different icon next to it.
Yeah.
Because when you were in, like, for example, AWS production versus alpha, the whole browser looked different. So you didn't get confused. Yeah.
Want to make
Yeah,
it as
that's
hard as possible to make a big mistake.
yes, yes. Yeah, so what you said, Cyrus, maybe is that extra push from this, we'll just call it the community mob mind right here, to lean into it harder with automation. Because that's what I've seen before, right? Like if you like half try to do key maps for keyboard shortcuts, you're frustrated. But if you lean into it and keep customizing the key map until everyone's happy, it's good.
Right.
So I think it's kind of one of those things that to get it to the sweet spot, it might take some investment with the automated quality gates.
Absolutely. And it goes
Yeah.
back to the steamroller approach that, you know, every
Yeah.
project starts with, where initially so much work is just spent building the highways to get across the map,
Yeah.
right? Before you're actually getting into building the functionality that you need. Yeah. So
Nice.
there's always a large amount of time investment getting everything tweaked and perfect. But over time, as things get more smooth, you start approaching, it was something my friend Alan referred to, the 15-minute red-green refactor cycle, which is that sweet spot where your team is writing a test, performing the implementation, doing some refactoring cleanup, and having a commit ready to go in under 15 minutes. And those are the kind of bite-sized chunks that we're shooting for. And one easy way to get there is by reducing the amount of time to get feedback on the changes that you just made, whether or not the changes meet basic quality standards, is going to save so much time. Now don't have a person sitting there reviewing, looking for missing this, that, placing things. You just know that's taken care of. You've got tests, you know, basic functionality is taken care of. Everything is well communicated.
Nice. Nice. Right on. Right on. Go
It
ahead,
might
Chris.
be. Oh yeah, I was gonna say it might be a good time to jump over to mobbing techniques and leveling up everyone. Yeah.
Well, this is something that I'm starting to introduce at my new company. A, because I'm the only software developer and I don't really have anybody to mob with. And B, I would really love the rest of my team to have more understanding of the software side of things. They're very strongly technically minded people who pick up on details very well. It's just none of them have had the past experience of working in software, writing basic programs. So to develop future training for future software hires, I am going to be incorporating our training, the entire current team into our training system, and essentially using mobbing practices and kata to teach them basic coding techniques and practice. This will get them on page with how the typical mobbing workflow works, how a typical software workflow works. And so that way they can learn through this process where they can go to look to learn information about the project by giving them hands-on actual experience with the process.
Oh, how cool. Nice, nice. And I guess, I think, I guess what's your main motivation for this initiative?
My main motivation for this initiative is just spreading knowledge. I feel like, especially when you have a multidisciplinary team, it's very important that you increase that middle ground on the Venn diagram of everybody's skills. Everybody should know a little bit about what everyone else does, because it facilitates communication. It lubricates those conversations. So that way people can quickly get on the same page with each other and understand why changes are happening and how they're going to be implemented a little more clearly. It helps people ask the right questions.
Have you is this just cross-disciplinary between engineering teams, or is this like including marketing or salespeople, or how are you, what's the delineation there?
Well, at this time, I've just got the engineering team working on this.
Yeah.
I haven't had very much interest from the sales team to be involved, but I've definitely offered the chance. Just, hey, hop on in, grab a keyboard.
Yeah.
You can't break anything. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Have you seen any like big kind of payoff from doing this so far, or is it too early to tell? What's been interesting about the experience?
Probably a little too early to tell. One of the things that I have found interesting about it is how excited some of the team members are to have the opportunity to jump in and get some coding direction from someone, because a lot of people are very curious about software, and a lot of people have dabbled. I know my colleague Sawyer he's the mechanical engineer on our team. He pulled out his Arduino the other day, which totally shocked me, and designed this LED light system. So he's got basic Arduino coding ability right there, and did a fantastic job on the project. He had me review his code and took a look at the work. And I was telling him, like, if he ever wanted to redo this, we could redo it in C++ pretty easily. And I'd kind of show him how an Arduino workflow compares to any other embedded workflow, kind of the similarities and differences between the two. So.
Yeah, it's funny. There have been a couple of times where I've invited mechanical engineer type people to do software and things like that. So that's
it's
interesting experience.
I have seen benefit from engineers I've worked with in the past on software, especially with Python, because they can learn how to perform some fairly complex engineering tasks that they may have been using Excel or other tools for in the past. But it's been helpful to learn how to write small programs that can give, once again, faster feedback, build their own tools, as it were. So,
right.
Nice. Yeah. So it sounds like you maybe have you ever? So it sounds like you've done this cross discipline mob thing, a Chris discipline mob. That might be interesting too. But the cross discipline mob. Have you ever done a mob of all firmware people or all software people?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, it would be the last two places I worked at where we did mobbing. It was the first place was 100% embedded context. We were building controllers for factory automation, devices that would control pumps, valves, sensors in a factory setting, and kind of bringing that into more modern context with IoT connectivity and other features. And that was a really amazing team. How that got started was they were using mobbing originally just as a training tool. They just wanted to gain a little bit better understanding of some new tools. So they were using mobbing as a way to bring up the entire team simultaneously. And then when it came to the point where they were actually performing the implementation, it was, why don't we just mob this? From there, it kind of took off. And I feel like the reason it took off so well there was we were an R&D branch, and the company had a really strong culture of using research and development to research things and develop things, including new ways of working. And so they gave us the green light. We started mobbing from there, and had a really beneficial experience, learned so much from my colleagues, just working side by side, being able to share screen and see how other people implement things. And it also kind of took my brain, but took my mindset and got it to where, instead of just building something that is mine, thinking more about who I'm delivering this to and taking their considerations into mind as I engineer the final product.
Nice. Right on. Right on. Oh, super cool story. Yeah, that sounds similar to the mob movement's origin story. Started as a training tool and later became a production thing. And cool. Yeah. So one follow-up question I had from that was, since you've had the experience of doing both the cross-discipline mob and maybe the one discipline mob, were there any major differences you saw? Or was it pretty much the same kind of thing?
One of the major differences I saw is it did feel like working in the multidisciplinary mob to be much more of a training session where I'm guiding other people and learning how to code, and we're all working together on a project. Whereas when it was just software, it did get to be a more interesting dynamic, especially when, and this has happened from time to time, there'd be disagreements. Sometimes egos might get involved where, someone would be like, well, I have the experience in the years and I say we go this way type attitude. I mean, that can happen. And other times where I've had people say like they didn't feel heard in the mob for various reasons. And I don't know, I guess circling back to these things, it's kind of just really important that everybody keep up the positive attitude and solid communication and be willing to listen. And I do feel like if you do come across any disagreements, end of day, this is software. The numbers don't lie. You can try stuff, measure what works. If that doesn't work, try something else. So
Nice. Right on. Yeah, very cool. And yeah, so it sounds like you're one of the privileged people who've been able to mob at different companies as well, right? So not just one company. So that's celebration moment. Woo! It's yeah, that's great to hear. And
I'm working on bringing it other places as well.
yeah. And yeah, so were there any major differences in the kind of the culture or mobbing culture between the two places? Yeah, but maybe pros and cons would be interesting to hear about.
You know, I would say there was a difference in culture between the two. And maybe that came from in the first mobbing experience, it was a very large company. We did have a very experimental, try it attitude, but at the same time, we also knew that there was some leeway in the way that we were doing things because we had a comfortably large company backing what we were doing. My second experience, I feel like things were a little bit different because it was a high pressure startup situation. And I did feel that, especially the management seemed a little frustrated with the early phases of the mob because they wanted to, we want to measure people, we want to see this done, we want to get this done. And so there might have been some friction with kind of pacing and planning between management and the mob in that place that may have been problematic. We did eventually at the second location, we started out mobbing and mobbed for over a year before finally separating out into several different project parts at management discretion. So, but during that experience, we had a lot of good opportunities, especially with junior engineers and interns. I really do love with mobbing that you can take newer people and expose them rapidly to more senior levels of implementing certain things, what's missing, what's not missing, things that they don't know they need to do in higher level professional product, because usually that's hidden behind the wall of senior level developers and managers.
Right. So in that high pressure environment, were there any experiments you tried in kind of demonstrating, the effectiveness or anything along those lines, or even in the scenario with the more junior developers, were they able to show that they could accomplish more or improve in mobbing over time, those sorts of things?
I would say the junior developers, I feel like, did indeed show that they were learning and improving and just made amazing strides in what they were capable of, and their ability to communicate and their ability to document the whole process. I feel like it was very beneficial. You did mention one demonstration. I do have kind of a funny mobbing story about this, where we were demonstrating our mobbing ability and we had a skeptic in the room. So we brought up this exercise and we started doing this exercise to show how mobbing works. And this person pulls out a piece of paper and a pencil and he's like, I bet I can solve this on my own with a piece of paper before you finish. And we actually did wind up finishing first, and he was just like right in behind. And the only thing I could ask him afterwards is like, yeah, but does yours compile?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly like all of these or not super measurable things that come out of mobbing, and also verbalizing the code and everybody understanding, and the idea that you also have the ability for people to like take a vacation and the code keeps going and stuff like.
Absolutely.
companies, I think it's very hard to visualize how much of a benefit, um, the practices and how quickly things can move along and iterations move along, because a lot of the times they say like typing is not the bottleneck, right?
It's not.
It's like the
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking, and yeah. Um, and so yeah, I find it interesting from that perspective. Um, in the scenario where there's kind of less pressure, or maybe yeah, more of a direction to do the right thing over rushing.
Right.
Um, like what practices did you see emerge that that started where they weren't available to you when everybody was solo or something? Did people start automated testing more? Did they start, adding new automated tools or anything along those lines? Or was it kind of more the same, but you were thinking through it faster? What was the effect of that in the more deliberate environment?
I would say the effect was, and one of my favorite things is that we had a very well established workflow and procedures that we recorded on the fly. We would try something, and if it worked really well, we would immediately add it to our procedures, usually during the retrospective.
Nice.
And that was another thing that we did that helped a lot, was having a daily prospective and retrospective kind of catch base on where we are. These are the things we plan on doing today. And then at the end of the day, just, touch base and see how we all felt about what we tried, what worked, what didn't work, why don't we like it? And having those kinds of conversations after a work session, I feel like has been insanely beneficial at the high level engineering. Because it happens sometimes where sometimes a library gets picked because it's the only library anybody knows.
Right.
But when you've got more eyes looking at it, more people researching, you can try out a couple different libraries and see which one is more ergonomic, which one provides better results for what you're trying to do. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know, it's one of those with software especially. I find it funny because everybody mobs already. Everybody gets together and works with colleagues to accomplish goals. Mechanical engineers do it all. Like you never see, oh, I am the mechanical engineer who designed the car.
Right.
You see that with software semi-frequently,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, I just did all the software. It's funny to think that really what mobbing is just bringing a bunch of people together who are experts in this one field and having them work together on a project, as though that's crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Right on. Yeah. And it's yeah, it always reminds me of like analogies people have done with sports or movies, where it's kind of like, hey, it's the quarterback on the football team wants to work alone, so he's going to throw the ball and then go sit on the bench, but he's got to throw it high enough so that someone else from the bench can come on the field and then catch it. Or like the actors,
yeah.
no one wants to interact with each other, so they're all going to film independently, and then we're going to splice all the film together, right? It's like this crazy idea of why don't we work together at the same time, and so you can truly interact. But yeah, and so yeah, I think that's definitely that definitely resonates with me, in that everyone does naturally mob in many different spheres of life. And I feel like Chris and the gang, when they rediscovered it and gave it the title mobbing and other titles that have come after that, it was it feels like something discovering and something inherent to human nature almost, that just working well together, which is pretty great.
Right.
I wanted to tie back into one thing that I thought was pretty cool, that the kind of throwdown competition with the skeptic. I have like
Yeah.
the final countdown playing in my head now.
Yeah.
But I thought that was cool. Not necessarily, and there's probably a lot of healthy ways to handle that interaction, but I think a common thing that would relate to all of them is openness, right? Kind of this open-mindedness to being like, and kind of an embracing the skepticism too, right? So it's kind of like, oh yeah, maybe you can do it better on your own. Let's try. You know what I mean? Or, you know, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think that goes a long way. And I feel like it it surpasses so much for lack of a better term, nastiness that we see often in our culture, which is just disagreement means I'm going to be rude and I'm going to call you a name and we're going to throw down right now in a bad way,
Mhm.
in a more name calling and
No,
critical way, critical of the people kind of way, as opposed to like kind of the more open approach of let's discover what works best, you know. And so
I kind of think that fits well with mobbing because you're in an environment where you don't have to get in an argument about who's right. You can try both and see who's right, or
yes,
not even think of it as who's right and who's wrong, but which is a better fit for the project we're both working on. Because
yeah,
at the end of the day, we're all working together, collaboratively, not
yeah,
competitive. So.
yeah.
Was there like an agile coach or anything along those lines, or because you mentioned a lot of practices like retrospectives and other kind of habitual things that maybe a coach would bring into a team. How did those practices make it in, um, aside from mobbing?
I guess they were all introduced through the mob. I never had any direct agile coaching that I recall, but I imagine many of the people that I had worked with on the team have had agile coaching in the past, and that influence definitely bled into the mob in positive ways.
Yeah, so it naturally kind of became a innovation for the team just because
Right.
somebody had seen it somewhere else and brought it in
It's
and yeah.
I think about this the agile quotes very frequently. These aren't rules, they are tools, right?
Yeah.
And these are a lot of tools that people have brought in. We tried them out, and everyone on the team just saw that implementing certain workflows, worked very well. So we just moved forward with that workflow. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. Nice, nice. Yeah, well, I think Chris, you got any other questions? Are we good to shut her down?
Yeah, well, so I guess Cyrus, I'd like to ask you, do you have anything that you'd like to plug or share before we close out the episode?
Absolutely. First of all, I got to plug my company I'm currently working for, Photon Marine. You can catch us at the New Orleans International Workboat Show, November 12th through 14th. I've also got some special thank yous to some partners of ours. First of all, we're working with Canada's Ocean Supercluster, who is an organization of companies working towards the goal of bringing electrification to marine industry, and also the Electric Power Research Institute for the help that they've given us. And I'd also like to give two other special shout outs, one to Matthew Bergman with X Consulting. He is the contractor who established the initial code base for for our current project. And I feel like he's a quality engineer who can engineer stuff for other people. And I'd like to say hello to everyone at Jorg Fisher who may be watching.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so to all of our guests out there, if any of this brings up discussion points or you have a similar story, leave them in the comments. Let's talk about it. And like, subscribe, comment, and more. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya.